I'm about to crash this paramotor into the ground. I want to basically test how much beating the paramotor can take. I'm a little confused and scared, so the designer and manufacturer part of me hopes that it will last as many beating as possible, but my herniated disc in the spine hopes it will be broken on the first try and then the whole thing will be over. I don't need to repeat that. Well, I don't think there is any other pilot who will just wake up in the morning and say, how about crashing the paramotor straight into the ground today? Well, to explain why we are doing is, I need to go back in time a little bit. So it was a year ago when Jean-Francois, a French/American pilot, wanted to do a crazy adventure with his Scout, flying 6,000 miles over 2 or 3 months. And that was a really tough adventure, and he really needed a tougher paramotor. So he designed a do-it-yourself diagonal supports for his Scout to make it a little stronger for transportation manipulation and eventually some fails on takeoffs, on landings. And it was a pretty good idea, and we are very grateful for these kind of suggestions that we get from customers how to improve our products. By the way, should you have any other suggestion how to improve the Scout, then please go to scoutparamotor.com/improvements. Now, we took this idea, and it was Stefan, our team member, who developed it a little further, and he really made that design brilliant. He attached the bars not onto the vertical part of the frame, but straight onto the engine mount, where the frame is the strongest. And this way, the bars got a little bit at an angle, so adding more rigidity with like sideways impact, and it prevents this parallelogram movement. A part of that, Stefan decided to use really premium materials. So the whole bars are made of 7075 T6 aluminium, which is the strongest aluminium you can get. Actually, this aluminium is almost as strong as stainless steel, but a third of the weight. So at the same weight, you can actually get a much stronger structure from this type of aluminium compared to stainless steel. So now the design is ready. Stefan decided to call it beef tubes. I don't know, I don't really like the name, but I like the product very much. And I want to see how it performs, how much stronger and how much more rigid the frame got when these beef tubes are installed. And the only way to find out is to crash it. Now, it's not the only way, but it's the most fun way to find out is to crash it. So this is why we are going to crash the Scout into the ground multiple times. So in one of our videos on this YouTube channel, the Paramotor Geometry Classroom, we discussed different ways how to crash a paramotor and how the frame can help you to absorb the impact, crumple zone, etc. In this particular experiment, we wanted to test and reproduce the most common beginner mistakes, which usually is coming in, braking too early, braking too much, losing energy, not having enough flare for the landing, having probably slow forward speed but really high vertical speed on landing, hitting the ground, and of course most beginners lift their knees, they don't use the landing gear and hit the ground with the cage first. And this is exactly what we want to reproduce in this experiment. So the first crash, I took a beginner glider, applied just a little brake, and I applied it a bit too late, so I didn't have enough flare. I had my feet up, so basically hit the ground with the cage and slid forward on the grass. The impact wasn't actually that bad.
So give it a little bit of surge so you crash harder.
Harder? Okay. So for the next round, I decided to come in with a bit more energy. I didn't use the brakes at all. You can see it on the trailing edge, no brakes applied. I basically glided into the ground with a lot more forward speed, and also the descent rate was surprisingly high. I hit the ground pretty hard. I was surprised. I didn't use my landing gear, feet up. So despite the surprisingly hard impact, the paramotor was not damaged at all. It was a little dirty, I was dirty, there were skid marks on the ground all over and mud, but really there's no damage to the paramotor, so we need to try something else. So guys, do you want a recipe for a standard beginner mistake on takeoff? Super easy. Apply brakes from the very beginning, and before you have sufficient speed, jump into the harness, lift your knees and hit the ground with your cage first, and then keep the throttle, hold the throttle until you slide another 20 meters. Amazing fun.
Look at the skid marks, man!
1, 2, 3, 4.
20. Wow. Straight on this side as well. Yeah. Look, it's here at the root. Man.
How about take off and cut the engine? That's a proper crash.
No, seriously, I have 3 kids.
Please.
I'm not gonna do that, because it's not about the strength of the frame, it's about the strength of your legs, because you come in face down, legs first, and it's really irrelevant what is behind your back. So no, do your YouTube research. I'm not gonna do that. So the YouTube is full of horrible crash videos that are usually a combination of bad weather conditions, insufficient scales, wrong judgment, incorrect gear or incorrect gear settings, and they usually lead to really bad injuries. The purpose of this video is not to show blood, broken bones and twisted ankles, but rather to test the Scout frame in some normal conditions within reasonable beginner mistakes, to show how forgiving it is or not. Yet there is a way how to escalate things quickly. So guys, by now you're probably disappointed because we didn't damage and trash and destroy the Scout yet, and I'm about to go to fix it. So we removed the diagonal beef tubes, and I'm gonna crash with the standard setup as it is without any additional reinforcement. Yeah, and we will see how much beating it takes. So wish me luck, and hopefully the whole thing will be over soon. Jumping into the seat too early. I've seen these type of accidents before, and I was pretty confident that the Scout will last. What I didn't expect though was that I will actually take off. Obviously I unloaded the glider a little bit, so the impact wasn't that hard. I'm about to fix that in the next try, where I jumped a little earlier with less lift and less speed, and yet the Scout didn't break, but I broke my GoPro mount. Having the beef tube removed and crashing the very standard Scout setup, it's still pretty strong, and it did survive a lot of beating, so we need to continue. What comes next? Number 7 is the most typical beginner mistake. Brakes applied way too early, glider too slow on landing, no flare authority, hitting the ground with increased vertical descent rate, but a limited full burst speed, kind of vertical crash. It was pretty hard. It was hard. So far, we still were not lucky to break it, and the goal is simple. We need more energy, we need higher speed. So we came in the next day when there was practically zero wind, so the ground speed on landing is higher, and I hit the ground full fast, no brakes applied at all. It wasn't enough. The crash number 8, it still didn't break. So what comes next? So crash number 9, to increase the speed even further, I opted for the advanced glider, smaller size. It's Ozone Viper 3 size 22, which increased the landing speed by about 10 kilometers per hour. I crashed into the ground with no brakes, and now nothing happened.
Man, it was so fast. Hopefully it did break finally.
No, it didn't.
No, I don't want to go again. Can we fake it somehow?
Let's jump on it.
Oh.
Crash number 10 was a little different because I applied a little brake, I flared a little, which decreased the vertical speed, but I hit the ground basically just from the front. So the frame got a frontal impact, which usually bends the frame backwards, and the prop would eventually crash into it. But still it didn't happen, so it seems like the frame, it's pretty solid and can withstand these type of impacts very well.
This is all against all my instincts, seriously. It's all wrong. I mean, coming it with 40 kilometers per hour and then you just do nothing or even stall it, or I don't know, what shall I do?
We had to be creative, and what we did is we moved the carabiner one step forward, which caused some incline backwards. Now, this normally could be a little dangerous because the horizontal component of the torque could cause some twist, but luckily the Scout has very good torque compensation, so it was still safe to fly. And the final goal was to approach the ground leaning backwards to hit the ground with the very back of the stand, which is the weak point. And in this case, the carbon cage would take the most of the impact and get loaded and eventually crack.
Guys, I failed. I probably crashed this paramotor probably a dozen times and I failed to break it. There are ways to break it. I can give you some good advice that I know from our customers, because it is possible to break it. Yes, we are selling spare parts for the paramotor, either the stands and definitely the carbon fiber. So I failed to do that because I was trying to break the stand here in my back. And so lifted my knees, hit the ground, it didn't work. What I know would work is crashing a little bit sideways, so crashing in an oscillation, going with the side, and it hit here. So in that case the impact will be taken only by one side. That means only half strength. It will be kind of a side impact, and the stand will bend slightly. It will break the carbon fiber hoop and eventually one spar. Now, aluminium will be bent, but aluminium doesn't like to be bent backwards. Don't even try it. If that happens to you, get a new stand, because when you're trying to bend it back into the original position, then it will break. Carbon fiber, it's pretty easy to repair. Actually, even this one has a patch because it was damaged on one of our trips. This is a demo machine that we use on the trips.
Actually, that's a repair that I've done in Iceland.
Oh, you did it in Iceland?
Yeah, that's a doggy one.
I did one in the campsite in Skogafoss. Anyway, so carbon fiber is easy to repair. With the repair kits, those are like 15 or 20 euros per piece, and it's enough material for fixing 2 or 3 carbon components of the Scout, or you need to replace it. So, conclusion about the beef tubes. I myself, I'm not sure if I would install them. Maybe if I have a crash, I would actually want the paramotor to bend and kind of deform and take the impact, not to be super stiff and rigid. But obviously there are people and pilots that I would recommend the beef tubes to. First of all, beginners, if you do all these kinds of butt landings, I mean, you've seen the Scout could take those butt landings and butt takeoffs without the beef tubes, but definitely the beef tubes. I mean, you feel it. It's there, it's stronger and more rigid. The second type of use, I would recommend the beef tubes to pilots who transport the Scouts on a hitch rack or on the back of a pickup truck, and they need to tow it down nicely, strongly. Then the whole thing is just more beefy. And the third type of use that I would recommend the beef tubes is definitely use with the trike. So if you put the Scout on a trike, definitely when you hit the ground hard on landing, it would be definitely good to have the frame reinforced. So this is it. These beef tubes are compatible with all the other Scout ones that are out flying there, so as an upgrade, and there are possible to order as an option with your new Scout, so you decide. 240 grams including the bolt and everything, so it really doesn't add much weight. I want to say a big thank you to Stefan, because this all was Stefan's project. He designed it from the very beginning. So Stefan, thank you very much. You did a great job. I'm sure that there will be many pilots out there who would love this product. This is him. Thank you, Stefan.
Oh,
Good.
Thank you too.
Good. Let's call it a day. Let's go home. Now seriously, Stefan, what shall I do? Any advice how to break it, Stefan?
Anything else than to do stupid things that personally I will not do?
That it's crash on the side?
Maybe?
Yeah, it will break. That's nothing new.
Say.
No, the whole point was to test the frame. I mean, if you crash here on the side, it will break. I mean, every paramotor will break here. Now the thing is, how? Maybe we can drive a car over it or something. Let's call it a day.